Hey everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the show and just remind everyone that we have shirts in the shop. Go to pgttcm.com. You can pick up shirts, stickers. We even have those shower curtains I was talking about last time. Also, you can join us on Patreon and get a free sticker. Check out the show notes and learn how you can be a part of People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, help support the show any way you can. Patreon users, you get a free sticker, at least. So check out what we've got. Show notes, that's where you're going to find our PayPal link and our sponsors and any information about any guests that are on the show and where to find them. Thank you.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio. Greetings, listeners. It is I, TV Spitzer Informer Dave, here once again to talk to you about the Cthulhu Mythos, its books, its monsters, its unfortunate human casualties, its timeline in general, and even its tangential bits, like the dreamlands or things of a weird nature that are Lovecraftian leaning. Once more we head into those dark woods, further feeling those malevolent forces upon us. Once again we walk down the lightless stone staircase in the middle of nowhere. You're listening to KZOM.
Awe, true to Kaiser, and blessed Saturnalia, how art thou, Davidicus? Oh man, that's...
Well, I am.
Good. I'm glad to hear. So, that was a terrible opening, but I'm not going to re-record it. Dave, how's
it's not the opening that Oleander wants, it's the opening Oleander needs.
Yes. And speaking of Oleander, how has your holiday in Oleander been, Dave?
It has been cold.
Cold, yeah.
We have, that, of course, fog is caused by ghost pirates.
Ghost pirates, yes.
And snow is caused by ghost Sasquatch.
Okay. We've had quite a bit of ghost Sasquatch around as of late, because we have 6 inches of snow out here in the cemetery, which isn't too bad. It looks great. It's beautiful. I'm going to try and get some photography later if I can find my old black and white camera from college. And how did gift exchanges go at the Dave household, at the Dave farm?
It went well.
Yeah.
We exchanged the goats. We gave them grain and raisins, and they exchanged milk and poop.
Oh, right. That sounds like a good exchange.
That happens every day, but we're a little heavier on the raisins.
Well, that's good. As long as you don't get the raisins and the poop confused.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. You don't have rabbits? Yeah, that's cool. I had a really super fun holiday with the family. I got Sarah a lid for her Instapot that turns it into a, air fryer. But what I think's really cool is I can put it on top and then finish off stuff that I was cooking in the Instapot and grill the top of stuff. So that's super cool. D&D books for kids. And it's gotten Barbacoa reading like crazy and telling me what his next couple D&D characters are going to be. And then I informed him, the great thing about being a dungeon master is all these cool ideas you have for heroes, you can then turn into heroes and villains that you can use whenever you want, because you just have that power to bring in someone new. And he's like, oh wow, I hadn't even thought about that. And Dusseldorf, I got her a bunch of calico critters that were ninja babies. So the calico critters that she has normally, they're continuing to go on their camping trips and their picnics and baking and stuff like that. But every once in a while, a trio of ninja babies come and mess everything up. So and
everything goes better with baby ninjas.
Everything goes better with baby ninjas, especially if you have a baby ninja chipmunk and a baby, what is it? It's a baby bear, a chipmunk, and a rabbit. If anyone knows about calico critters, I kind of know that there's like little woodland families that come with all these various play sets, so that's pretty cool. And I got nothing for Christmas because I ain't been nothing but bad. I actually got a new pair of boots and a flannel shirt. But yeah. That's how the holidays went around over at the Spitzer household.
Well, that sounds like a very not Norman Rockwell,
no.
but not Hieronymus Bosch holidays. So
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun. So this week we are talking about cults of the Cthulhu Mythos. And Dave, do you have a favorite cult of the Cthulhu Mythos?
I'm not sure if favorite is the word. I'll say the first one though I think of is probably the Esoteric Order of Dagon.
Yeah. Okay.
And which is kind of like Masonic Cthulhu. We're talking about it a little bit. There's probably only about 5 or 6 organized cults that Lovecraft described.
Sure, yeah.
To varying degrees. So what is your favorite cult?
Oh, my favorite cult is Louisiana Swamp Cult. I'm a big fan of swamp cults.
That's a big one.
Yeah. I really am a fan of their depiction in the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's The Call of Cthulhu motion picture. But no. I've always
that was I believe like 2 people. There was a male cultist and a female cultist, and then they just CGI'd them. So actually like 2 actors.
I think it was a few more than that.
Hundreds of them.
Yeah, I think it was a few more than just 2, but yeah. No, they superimpose. Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing. But I do think it was a little bit more than 2, unless it was just 2 actors that they switched the outfits on, and then I definitely believe it was 2. But yeah, no, it was a digital effect that I first saw in The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones, where Indiana Jones was surrounded by a bunch of bandits. Anyway, we are not talking about cultists. We are talking about cultists.
CGI.
So let's stay on topic. So, what would you say are the major cults that Lovecraft came up with?
Well, so first of all, we have the nameless cult in Vestal. And that's sort of, it's called Spring. These were just, on the surface, very normal-looking, farmers. I believe festival takes place out of Kingsport. But they just worship this flame underground.
Yeah.
So we have that. We have the Cthulhu Cult. We have of Louisiana.
Yeah.
We also have in Call of Cthulhu, we have a sort of a related maybe cult is the sailors. The sailors who have access to the islands of Panope, and we also have the Church of the Starry Wisdom. We have then the Order of the Dagon, but then we've got people like the Wheatleys, where if they could get converts, they would be a cult, but they're not able to grow.
Yeah, I feel like in the past they had more people, but that shrank as the hills ran less wild.
Yeah, and that's sort of you can kind of break Lovecraftian cults. You have this sort of very primitive, sort of very, very primitive people who live out in the wilderness, who are very, and I'm saying this nicer than Lovecraft is, but very close to nature.
Yeah,
they're not very technical. They've held on to these old pre-Christian ways.
Sure, yeah.
And in some ways, they don't want to be part of the society. Or they blend in perfectly the society.
Yeah.
And then the other kind of aspect of cults that Lovecraft creates are these pseudo-Masonic based societies.
Yeah.
And now, I'm sure that Lovecraft was not a Mason. His father, we discussed this last week, as a salesman, his father might have been, but I don't think he was a very devout Mason.
Yeah.
But Lovecraft would have, in New York, and I'm sure also in Providence, would have seen Masonic temples. They would have known there would have been prominent people. So he may not have known much about, fraternal societies. But they were pretty popular in the 20s, the Odd Fellows. And so he would have known about them. So I think that Starry Wisdom and the Order of the Esoteric Order of Dagon were inspired. I don't know anywhere he wrote that down, but they're they come off very fraternal societies.
Yeah.
And here's the interesting thing. They both are in abandoned Christian churches.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And Lovecraft, of course, was an atheist, but at the same point, he kind of vaguely respected Christianity in the fact that it gave the masses morality. If they weren't smart and advanced like him, they wouldn't need it. But he felt that, it was better, people believing in religion was better than, running around overpopulating the world.
Sure.
And so, but I'm not sure if that's deliberate, especially since Haunter in the Dark is one of the last stories he wrote.
Yeah.
But they kind of supplemented Christianity by taking over the buildings.
Yeah, no, and that is, I was going to say, it's a common theme in Lovecraft, as in, percentage-wise, how many stories have this, how many stories have that, and there's two right there. But, and I feel like there's, almost, unspoken cults that are going on in Lovecraftian stories that we don't know about. We don't know about, Joseph Campbell was part of a large, cadre of immortal wizards, but we don't know.
You mean Joseph Kerwin?
Joseph Kerwin. What did I say? Joseph Campbell?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking. Yeah, Joseph Kerwin. And
maybe Joseph Campbell was a part of a cadre of larger wizards.
Yeah. I think if we look at Joseph Campbell and who he hung out with, he was part of a large cadre of wizards. Anyway, so Kerwin was friends with other immortal wizards out there. We know this from his writings, his correspondence. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. We know this from his correspondence, and there's a greater thing going on there. And I think the Yithians, when the Shadow Out of Darkness, I believe it is, when what's his name is
Shadow Out of Time.
Shadow Out of Time. Thank you. So Shadow Out of Time, Professor Peasley, I think it is. I don't have any notes in front of me right now. I'm going off the top of my head. Peasley gets taken over by a Yithian, travels the world, hangs out with other people who are into the Cthulhu mythos, and this is like something that's documented, that he's, going and meeting people. There's got to be some sort of network that Yithians or these people, there's got to be some sort of network, and maybe not a cult necessarily, but maybe a cult of information, a cult of concept, a philosophy almost, regarding deep old ones or Yithians or anything like that. Great old ones, not deep old ones. But yeah.
No, exactly. That's sort of have their support network. Mm-hmm. I have worships Yithian. Yeah. And that's, again, my head canon, and that's my role-playing games.
Definitely,
and some stories I wrote. But definitely, the Yithians realize they're not gods. Mm-hmm. The Yithians got a really good idea what the universe really is.
Definitely.
But they're willing to play up that they are godly to strengthen their support network.
Yeah.
And part of it on the Yithian side, it's easier to explain to these simple-brained monkeys that we're divine, rather than try to teach them the true science of time travel and nuclear power and things like that the Yithians have.
Yeah, and also if you give, monkeys power too early, they can blow everything up and then make it so that you don't have a place to hide somewhere in the 20th century. Oops.
Yep.
My theory is Yithians kind of messed something up and, made it so they couldn't, made it so that a good chunk of Earth's history was uninhabitable. Or maybe Nyarlathotep. That guy did it so that Yithians, or who knows. So I wanted to move on to the Black Pharaoh and Cult of the Bloody Tongue and all these Nyarlathotep, or however you want to pronounce it. Your mileage may vary with your pronunciations. Now, you got a deity with a mask of 1,000 faces, so you have at least, I don't know, that many cults.
True, and one sort of cult that Lovecraft that we have not mentioned is witch cults.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, witch cults were sort of this anthropological, they were studying it. So Lovecraft is very much. So we've got witch cults, and we see that in covens. We see that, we see that in the Dreamlands. In the Dreamlands, we see actual religions. But there's definitely witch covens that, again, the difference between a coven and a cult is size.
Okay.
I think in the Lovecraftian work, the covens are very small. A few witches, where the cults can be this world spawning, worlds, covering religion. So we do see witch cults there. The other is sort of, there's this other sort of kind of assumed, but Lovecraft doesn't talk about, possibly because Lovecraft is not comfortable with the subject, is Shog-Niggurath.
Yeah.
And Shog-Niggurath, we don't get a lot about Shog-Niggurath, but she is basically the fertility goddess, a warped fertility goddess. And what good is it to be a fertility goddess if you don't have cults? And the closest we really see to one of it, and it's not Lovecraft, and it's not expressively Shog-Niggurath, is Robert E. Howard's Black Stone.
Yeah.
Where Godfrey, has that vision and these dreams, and I think even the narrator also has dreams when he sleeps there, of seeing what these primitive cults are.
Yeah.
And again, it's very important because churches change.
Yeah.
Real world religions change. Even very sort of, and I don't mean this a bad way, but even, there's definitely a difference between Christianity in 1000 and in 2022,
Oh, yeah.
But because these have it's fiction, but fiction with a very hands-on, the cult, these deities, in many cases, try to keep it the same way.
Yeah.
So they're worshiping the same way these first humans, first Homo sapiens to beat the Neanderthals worship, or, especially Narahotep, he's progressive. He's willing to follow the trends in society.
Oh, sure.
So if the new trend in 1920s New England is fraternal societies, he's willing to run it as a fraternal society.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Where we get other ones, we get the feeling specifically kind of at least want to keep some of their cults.
Sure.
The same way as the old.
Yeah.
And I think Lovecraft did that too, to show just how out of touch these people are. In their case, they know the reality. They know that there are these alien being creatures. They are real. But at the same point, they sort of reject the modern comforts. They live in the swamp, They live on the islands, so that they not be touched by the modern belief system.
Yeah.
But Lovecraft definitely mixed that up, because then you have the people in the festival who, that they're just like any other 1920s, Massachusetts farmer.
I think they're fishers. Kingsport's Ocean Town.
Yeah, but I got the impression that the guy he was staying with had a small farm. I'll have to reread the festival, but the same thing.
Definitely. Something that I think is interesting about cults in the Cthulhu mythos is the Cult of Cthulhu. If we just talk about the more primitive aspects of the Cult of Cthulhu, you have a Inuit tribe up north that worships Cthulhu, or Tulu. You have a group, you have sailors all throughout, roughly, that worship Cthulhu, a bunch of sailors whose boat is found, the Alert, and I'm getting stuff all confused. And then you have the Louisiana swamp cult. But one thing that these all have in common is they're close to bodies of water. They're all kind of the sailors can get to far up north. I feel like the Cult of Cthulhu of this variety is kind of like the Cult of Cthulhu of this variety is kind of like an ocean-going cult. It's like everything's spread by sailors. It's spread by people who hear the call, who see R'lyeh. Maybe they've seen bits of the bottom floor pop up and know who Dagon is, and know that there's something that even Dagon worships. I imagine small tropical islands, far up north, archipelagos, swamps that border, maritime areas, stuff like that. And I don't know. I think that it's one kind of thing for you don't hear about cults of Cthulhu in the Appalachians. You don't hear about. And then that makes me go, oh, what about that family that lived in that house, and then those guys go and visit it, and two of the guys die, and they have weird eyes, and they burrow in the ground. It's I can't remember the name of that one. It's the Lurkers. No, I can't remember. Do you know which one that is, Dave?
The Lurking Fear? Or
Lurking Fear?
The Mackenzie kin? I'm not...
Yeah. I was thinking about the Mackenzie kin. It's what do the Mackenzie kin worship? Or is it just kind of this... the family that have the two different colored eyes and burrow underneath the house now? It's what do they worship? Anyway, the Cthulhu Cult, I definitely think, is kind of like a crazy, amazing thing that's been going on for a long time. And, in the Cult of Cthulhu, I know last week I said, what if it's not real at all? But, for the sake of the story, there is a cult that pretty much is on the water that worships a being beneath the water. And that's pretty interesting.
So, and part of that is Lovecraft read a lot of pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And so there's an island that's not too far from where Riley's supposed to be. And it was, now I think it's called Pompeii, spelled Pohnpei, but back then it was Panape.
Yeah.
And so there was a German anthropologist that wrote things about the cults of Pompeii, or Panape, as I like to call it, back in the 20s. And so there's this very interesting thing that I think that influenced Lovecraft's cults, because there's this very interesting thing where there are what they thought were large pillars, basically, that the people in Pohnpei would take into the middle of the harbor, and then they would lay them vertical. And so you have these huge square rectangles that would be covered with seaweed. And they also have these pyramids, which are strange. There was no writing. And this was actually to an eel god, a moray eel god. They would make canals so that eels could travel through the island.
Oh, wow.
And so when Lovecraft is reading about this, and this German anthropologist, it's this belief that they built these huge rafts, and then lowered these rectangular pillars down. But it turned out about 10 years ago, they actually went and they did a bore through them, and it's completely seaweed.
Oh.
And they're just, the way the water bounces off of this harbor, it makes them perfect rectangle shapes. And so I think there's a lot of evidence that Lovecraft didn't speak German, so he didn't read the prima facie things about Panape and Panape. So he didn't read the German science papers.
Sure.
But at the same time, he read what people had written about them. And I think that definitely had an influence on his... on Call of Cthulhu, or at least the location, the island cults.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Any other cults that we want to talk about or can think about right now?
I think most of the other cults that we're going to see really are products of gaming, or probably best in gaming.
Yeah. There's definitely, I want to say, with I don't know, second, third, fourth generation. I don't know what generation of the Cthulhu myth writing circle we're at currently, but definitely there's I want to say in the 70s and 80s a fair amount about people writing about the cults and stuff like that. If you track down new Cthulhu writer type stuff that came out, people that were influenced by H.P. Lovecraft and Block and everyone. And anyway, but you'll find a little bit more of that, and definitely more in the role playing. Keith Herber, I don't know, is responsible for at least 6 cults that we generally talk about when we talk about Cult of Cthulhu because of Masks of Nyarlathotep. And let's not forget about, like, whoever, I can't remember who did horror, what is it? Horror on the Orient Express, Terror on the Orient. What is
the Horror on the Orient Express?
Yeah. I mean,
which I haven't played. I don't know much about that one, I'll admit.
You know, no spoilers, but there's some cults involved, and but definitely there's a lot of different cults in the game, Call of Cthulhu, and even more, even different ones in Delta Green, and if there's any other Call of Cthulhu themed RPGs that I'm not sure of what they are, I'm sure there's even more. But we're hitting the half-hour mark here, so we are going to go into D&D on D&D after the interview. And Dave, who do we got for the interview this week?
So we've got a very, I'm really excited about this interview. Mm-hmm. It is Jesse D'Angelo.
Oh, cool.
And he's got a new book out that combines sort of 1980s sort of Miami Vice cop with Native American lore.
Oh, cool.
And it's called Pray to God, Prey.
Gotcha. Cool. And after that, we are going to talk about cults of Call of Cthulhu. Cults of Call of Cthulhu in your D&D and RPG. And hey, you know, it's the holidays, and the holidays are rolling around, and almost it's going to be New Year's. One thing I gave a lot of people this year, and I bought it myself, I didn't get some kind of super discount for talking about it, but Copper Cow Vietnamese pour-over coffee. I gave some to my family. I gave a bunch to Sarah. She's really enjoying the mocha, which is just the regular coffee with a chocolate-flavored condensed milk that comes along with it, and the churro. I love the churro. I want to give her some of the churro. I've been sneaking it and keeping it all for myself in the studio, but I bought her a box too, so she's got that, and I don't know. I have to really highly recommend. Check out Copper Cow pour-over coffee, and they also have, like, bags of it that you can buy if you want to just brew your own coffee, but you want some really good Vietnamese coffee. So Copper Cow, check the show notes, and, you know, check for other sponsors. Back to the show.
Dave's corner of the podcast. Dave's.
And we are back. Well, we, not me and DB, but me, Farmer Dave, and Jesse D'Angelo. Jesse, we are so glad to have you on the show today.
Hey, David, how you doing?
I am well. So let's see, how are you doing? But a little bit more about you, so our audience gets to know you a little bit better.
Well, I'm doing great, and I just released my new book today, so I'm super stoked about that. And
congratulations!
Yeah, just here to chat up with whatever you want to talk about, monsters and horror or anything else, farm animals. I know you're on a farm. I got some wild animals here myself, a couple cats.
You have wild felines?
Yeah, I got a couple little divas here who think they're like runway models. So, yeah, they run the show here.
They are descendants of the goddess Bast, and you mere humans do not forget it.
Exactly. Yes.
So let's start off with your book. It's called Pray to God, but Prey?
Correct.
So tell us about the book, but I love the title.
Thank you. Well, it's a story about a group of basically enemies, some cops, some crooks, some innocent bystanders who get themselves trapped together in a cave while an ancient creature tries to get in and kill them all. And they're all enemies, but they're forced to work together to get out of this terrible situation. And some of them have secrets, and some of them are good, some of them are not so good. And, let's just say that the monster outside isn't the only monster in the story. So,
excellent. Is it modern setting, or what's the setting?
It takes place modern day in Arizona. And so it kind of everything starts with a drug deal out in the middle of the desert near the Grand Canyon, and everything kind of goes south, and they discover that they are wandered into the territory of this ancient beast, and then they're kind of screwed and stranded together. So it's kind of a horror adventure kind of story. And it's been on my mind for many years. The original story, I wrote a short story when I was 12, which was the nucleus of this idea. And throughout the years, I kept kind of revamping it and evolving it, changing the characters, changing the plot around. I wrote it as a screenplay when I was like 19, then did a different version of it. So it's really kind of evolved. And this year is the first year that I really started pursuing my dream of becoming an author. And this is now the fourth book that I've published this year. And when I was thinking of, after I finished the first three books, I was thinking, well, what should my next book be? And it just occurred to me that, this story has been like burning a hole in my head ever since I was 12 years old, one iteration of the story or another. So it was kind of like a no-brainer to finally tell this story, tell it right the way that it should be, and to do the art to go along with it. And I think I pulled that off. I think I came up with, the final version of this story, and the best way that it could be told. So hopefully it should be, suspenseful and horrific and disturbing and cool. So that's the aim.
Excellent. And Arizona, not only does it have all these incredible caves and cave systems that, but it has a lot of, urban legends, but Native American Native American beliefs and creatures and monsters. So you've got this incredible sandbox. Excuse the pun, being Arizona, but you got an incredible sandbox to work with.
Yeah, well, one of the chapters is actually called The Sandbox, and two of the main characters are Native American tribal police officers, right?
Oh, excellent.
So I am playing off of the ancient poems and legends and whatnot. It's a fictionalized tribe, but it's still the classic like Mayan and Aztec legends, and some revamped versions of the legends. I'm basically dropping the eclectic group of people into a blender and forcing them to have to deal with each other while one of those legends has come to life, basically.
Excellent. I'm really excited about it. And you said we can get that on Amazon, right?
It's on Amazon right now. It's in a print version and an ebook version. And at some point in the future, I'm moving towards going wide. So hopefully I'll get it into Barnes & Noble and Kobo and Google and all the various other ways that people can access books. I just want to get it and my other books out to as broad an audience as possible. And this summer, I've got a great narrator who's agreed to come on board to do the audiobook, Sean Duriger, who's done...
Oh, great.
And so, yeah, I'm just trying to get it into as many formats and into as many hands as possible and get going. And I'm already starting to think about the next book. So, I just want to write as many books as I can and get as good at it as I can. So that's the goal right now.
Excellent. And you're, in addition to an author, you're a YouTuber, right?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about writing and horror movies, horror books. Sometimes it's like a journal where I talk about my writing process. Sometimes I'll give, writing advice and editing advice and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm actually not so good at video editing at the moment. So all of my videos are kind of just raw, me talking, and I've tried a couple times to get the right editing software and get someone to give me a little tutorial. And I've sat down in front of YouTube and watched YouTube tutorials about it, and I've so right now my videos are a little bit rough.
That's kind of nice that in years in the future you can sit down and look at it and say, oh, look at how I improved so much.
Yeah, I hope so. This book is an improvement over the last ones. Everything's custom. I did the cover myself. I did the interior illustrations. I did the little chapter breaks in different fonts, and I went all out with it with this one. So I'm happy to see that it came out so well. I'm also working with a new editor, Mason Hargis, who's young and brilliant and way smarter than I am and knows his grammar inside and out. So working with him to make it as strong as it can be, just that alone has put it above the other books I've done. So I'm looking at my proof copy right now, and I'm just so happy with it. It's just a professional product.
Well, excellent. I'm excited about it. I'm definitely going to order one out there because, I love horror. I love, Native American legends and traditions. It sounds great. Other than Native American, what's some of your favorite horror?
Well, right now, my favorite author would probably be Robert Mccammon. He writes horror, but also, thrillers and mysteries and stuff. He's just all around a great storyteller. Obviously, I'm a Stephen King fan. He's not my all-time favorite, but, I've read several of his books, and he's great. Clive, great. Darcy Coates, she's new, and she started as an indie self-publishing author like me, and she's gone on to become, award-winning, best-selling author, and she's been a real inspiration to me. And I actually have gotten to chat with her a little bit on an online chat room, and she's super cool. She always responds to my letters or my emails, I should say, and is very gracious and generous with her advice.
Oh, you gotta love that, and then of course you think somebody does that for you. You want to share it with others.
Yeah. She's great, and she's a great writer and just a really cool person, and I'm just feel really lucky that she gives me the time of day. And another author, not a horror author, but Jack Carr, writes the James Reese series. That's the one that they're shooting I keep saying TV movie, but it's like a streaming mini series with Chris Pratt called The Terminal List. That's the first of the books about a Navy SEAL who is framed and people are trying to kill him, and he has to go stop the bad guys. It's a political thriller. So it's not the kind of book that I would write, but it's a great thriller and a great series. And a friend of mine actually got me in touch with Jack Carr. And,
oh, excellent.
Yeah, and much like Darcy Coates, he's been, super gracious and nice to me, and, returns my letters, and, he wants to see a copy of Pray to God. So I'm going to send him one. So, just knowing that people like that even know my name and are this time of day feels great, because I'm still brand new at this. So yeah, those guys and any of those authors I just mentioned, I would highly recommend.
Yeah, no, excellent choices. Now, do you find, and so Pray to God, obviously very Native American, it's got horror, but it sounds like it's also got a little bit of thriller or at least police story in it. Do you find the other things you want to bring into horror, other genres besides horror?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like a horror adventure. You know, it's almost like a Edgar Rice Burroughs kind of, you know, or Jules Verne kind of thing. Although those lean more towards fantasy or sci-fi. But I mean, this story, yeah, it's horror, but it's also adventure where, you know, there's gunfights and chases, and, you know, this group of people has to like plunge into this ancient cave system where they're the ruins of an ancient civilization, and a lot of crazy shit happens, you know, and yeah, it's definitely got the elements of action and thriller in there as well. But
there may be sort of that come or sort of maybe incubated in the fact that you thought about making it into a screenplay?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it started as a short story when I was 12. Then when I was like 19, 20, it became a screenplay. And, you know, a few years later, I revamped the screenplay and made it a bit better. So, you know, I come from a film background, and I'm a visual artist. So I'm always like picturing things as I write them. And, you know, I'm imagining this as a movie as I'm writing it, even as a book. You know, I have to see it in my head. I have to hear everything. You know, a lot of times I'll just close my eyes and imagine the scene as if I'm watching a movie, where I'm, you know, hearing the sound, I'm hearing music to go with it. I'm seeing, you know, how the creature is going to look and what the lighting is, and, you know, getting into that mindset helps me actually write it. And I mean, I say Robert Mccammon is my favorite author right now, and part of the reason of that is that his writing is so cinematic. The first book I read of his was Stinger, which is like horror, sci-fi, action kind of book. And boy, reading that book, it's like you're watching a movie. Like, you forget you're reading a book. It just feels like the way he describes it, you can see everything, hear everything, feel it, you know, and that's what I try to do with everything I write. I try to immerse the reader to the point where they forget that they're sitting reading a book, and it feels more like they're watching a movie.
Amazing. And yeah, I think those are the best books, are the ones that sort of give you that vivid visual experience when you think about it.
Yeah, and it's a balancing act between like how much you want to describe and how much you need to leave to the reader's imagination so that they can, you know, fill in the blanks. So, you know, that's where the craft comes in. And, you know, I have a lot to learn, and, you know, I intend to do this for many more years, and I intend for each book to be a bit better than the last, you know. And that said, I think this book is my best so far. And
excellent.
I'm not just saying that. I'm really, really happy with it. But yeah, after a few more books, I'll probably look back on it and be like, eh.
So as we're slowly but surely kind of running out of time here, our traditional question, though, we try to ask everyone this. If you were given to be in charge of any project, any creative project, any medium, don't have to worry about money, and copyrights, don't worry about that. That's taken care of. What is your dream project?
Oh boy, my whole life is a collection of dream projects. I have so many. You know, there's movies I'd love to make, obviously, but right now, since I'm focusing on books, you know, I'll keep my answer to books. I have a couple of books that I'd like to write. One of them would be like a big epic, you know, 1,000-page book like Stephen King's It or Robert Mccammon's Speaks the Nightbird. I'd love to write something that's like long and epic, but that I can also
like Dune or Tolkien.
Yeah, something just huge, and that I would also do the interior art for. Like in this book I just finished, I did interior art, but not for every single chapter, because, you know, I don't have the time. You know, I can't afford to just stay all day and just draw. It would take me like a year and a half to do the art for every single chapter. But like, my dream, if I got to do one of these epic books, is that, you know, I would do the art for every chapter, and it would be, you know, as detailed and and awesome as I imagine in my head. And that, you know, this one story in particular would make a great, you know, like a Dark Tower, you know, something big and long and epic. And yeah, so that's one that I'm thinking about. But I mean, in general, right now, it's not like one specific project that's like my dream. Like right now, my dream is to just write as many books as I can and make them as good as they can be, and make this a career that I can fully support myself on, and, you know, not necessarily have to be a best-selling author or sell millions of copies or anything like that, you know, but, you know, the dream is that I can actually just support myself with my writing and, you know, have some level of fan base and, you know, just have a library or a catalog of books, you know, under my belt. So it kind of
Well, you definitely seem to be on your way.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. You know, it ain't easy, but I'm doing it.
And again, now I know your current Pray to God is going to be in Amazon. Where can readers find you on YouTube or any other projects you've done?
Well, on YouTube, my little show is called Story Time with Jesse. And you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. And you know, I've worked in the film industry, so if you really want, you could look me up on IMDb. And, you know, I've got some art credits and a few acting credits when I was a little kid and stuff like that. But yeah, nothing huge. And I'm not really like going full on into the YouTube either. Like, I was doing it once, but now I've kind of cut down on that, trying to just focus on the writing. And
sure, no, writing takes a lot of effort, a lot of time.
Yeah. So, but no, people trying to do press, like you know, talking to you, talking to anybody else who wants to talk to me, and just spreading the word around so people know my stuff is out there. So, you know, that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show. And as we get closer to the new year, hopefully we're going to be able to have you on again sometime in 2022.
Yeah, that'd be my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right, is this it?
I think that's a really good interview.
Thank you once again for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. You can help show your support by going to the show notes and following any of the links that'll tell you how to support the show and how to support our guests. And thank you to all of our guests who you can find in the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe, and remember, patrons get priority access to asking us questions, suggesting topics, even, I don't know, submitting stuff. Actually, you don't have to be a patron to submit anything. That's how Dave got on the show, and that's how you can get on the show too. It's the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you for listening. Back to the show. Right now, here's me and Dave talking about cults from Cult of Cthulhu and the Lovecraftian shared universe. Dave, what do you got?
Well, you know, if you're doing a fantasy role-playing game,
Yeah.
it's just assumed, you know, religions are real. Gods are real.
Gods are real, correct.
Because otherwise, you know, why could the clerics be able to do healing spells and blade barrier spells and, you know, all these things? So cults are real. Cults are just more secretive. That for some reason they do human sacrifice, or so for some reason they're just have to be secret or died out.
Sure.
And historically, there were mystery cults. I mean,
oh, definitely.
You know, mystery cults were a real thing that kept their their rituals secret for one reason or another. So the thing that I think that really 5e gives you, though, is that you don't necessarily have to have a cleric of Cthulhu when you got the warlocks.
Yeah.
The warlocks, the eldritch warlocks, and they even have like a deep, they definitely put a lot of mythos into the 5e warlock.
Sure, yeah.
Which the 3e warlock came out like in the middle of the 3e period, and they went to like school and trained, and I think there was, but it's definitely you might as well just call it an eldritch warlock occultist.
Yeah. Big fan of the Warlock. Haven't played one, but I like what they're about. Something I was...
And they even have a Celestial Warlock, which is like an alternative to where you got like a personal angel guide instead of the gods.
Oh, that's cool. That's pretty neat. Yeah, no. Something I was thinking about is like if you did a campaign kind of like Sinbad, not the comedian, but the subject of several Ray Harryhausen films. But yeah, no, if you did kind of like a Sinbad thing, and you're on the sea a lot, and you've got little islands here and there, and maybe some of the islands are occupied by Cho-Cho, and some of the islands are occupied by Deep One hybrids, and you have cultists of Cthulhu and other sailors or pirate types that worship Cthulhu, or heck, you might even get a fancy galleon of, Hastur worshippers with pale, more pale than white sails. Anyway, like a pale yellow sails, or.
And the game that really is set up for that is the Modiphius Conan. In fact, they have an entire book dedicated to the cults.
Interesting.
Cthulhu Cult, Hastur, especially, of course, one of the main evil cults in the Conan story is Set.
Yeah.
And basically, so Set is kind of an evil version of Yig.
Yeah.
And that. So, but there's a whole book dedicated on how to run adventures as cults or against cults. And then if you wanted to play sort of, maybe not a full cultist, but a sort of a spiritual sort of fringe, they have things like Pilgrim. And so, if you're going to run a cult campaign, definitely suggest checking into Modiphius's current Conan books.
Cool. That sounds really, really neat. Yeah, no. Something I remember is like, and maybe you can help me on this. It's like, this is like a vague memory of my childhood, but reading National Geographics and having them talk about like cults of like the Roman era of like death cults and stuff like that. And I remember thinking that when I started playing D&D of being like, oh wow, you can like have a huge city, and the city's so big that people don't know that underneath the wine merchant there's an evil cult that worships like murderers. And that's something that you could definitely do in like your Greyhawks and your Water Deeps and your Mesobranzians, or I don't know if I even said that right, but your Drow City could have a secret cult to something that people go, wait a minute, that's like worse than Loth, and we're Drow, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, but then again, if it's my campaign, they don't worship Loth, they worship Atlach-Nacha. And you find out that maybe beneath there is a cultist of Thagwa that doesn't even care about your city and is undermining it as we speak. But yeah, I don't know. Any other ideas that you've got, Dave?
Well, in that, you could have, you could have sort of this idea, the Marvel universe where Shield is being, taken over by Hydra.
Sure.
You could have your Church of Zeus or Pelennor.
Yeah.
And then there could be like a few people who found like Cthulhu worshiping and stuff, inside the body of the main church.
Oh yeah. And anytime you've got like modern cities, you've got churches, but you've also got sewers, and you've also got like subterranean areas and such. And like the movie, have you ever seen John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay. Well, they have the cylinder that contains God in the basement. But what if you have like a major metropolitan area like New York or Rome, ancient Rome? Has a lot of sewers. Paris has the catacombs, and that's where your cults live, in the darkness. That will have to force your players to go in two places. Say you have a cult. First part is you want to find out who the cult is. You want to figure out what they're up to, and then lastly, how to get rid of them and stop them from doing what they're doing. Generally, in the last part, stopping them from doing what they're doing, you have to go to either their home turf and stop them on their home turf, or then go to some place where it's like a bunch of cultists out in the open, and then you have to, these are options when like finally dealing with your cult in your campaign. Generally, then after that, you have to, people are like, oh, fight a big monster, or anyway. But if you have to go fight a cult, make it as difficult for your players as possible. Put it in the sewers. Put it in an underground labyrinth that no one knew about underneath the city of Pittsburgh. Dilapidated, underused subway system from Los Angeles that's no longer being used. Old rail lines here and there. There's a lot of things you can do with old sewers. Whole underground city in Seattle that you could use. You've got steam tunnels underneath Portland. San Francisco has like all that stuff from the earthquake. And anyway, there's like so many different things. All cities have all kinds of like deep underground secrets, and all cities, like, look up your city right now. Look up the closest metropolitan city and start looking at turn-of-the-century crime, like 19th century crime, 18th century crime. If you live in Europe, you know that your town, your city, your whatever has history. If you're in
so a little bit off, but I'm going to show a story of that.
Go for it.
So my father worked as a manager for a security company.
Yes.
And this was in the 90s. And he hired a guy who was just an old retired phone guy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And this was in Oxnard, California. And you wouldn't think of it, but in the 30s and the 40s, Oxnard had a Chinatown.
Yeah.
And he said that this guy was, he was fresh, journeyman. And he was hired by the Tongs to run phone systems in this underground, basically gambling dens where the Oxnard Airport is now, so that if the cops came in, they could call and warn everybody out. So, but the thing is, there's almost no record of this. Yeah. So even this city and the nearby city Ventura, we have found some, but even this city, most people, 99.9% of people live there, didn't know there was an underground city.
Yeah. Here's an example that I'll use from my personal life that is the exact opposite. At one point in time, I lived in Iceland, and the place that I lived at one point in time, the person who rented the house to me said, and just to let you know, when it gets cold, and you don't have to worry about this because it's not going to be that cold, but if it gets too cold that we can't open up the ground, we store bodies in the basement here until springtime. And my bedroom had the doorway to the basement, but there was also an outside entrance to the basement. And I was told that there used to be people who met to pray over the bodies and stuff like that. And then I had just weird visions of a cult of like people praying over frozen bodies in the basement, and this was just like, you know, what happened in a town of like 900 people in the West Fjords of Iceland. It was just where they stored bodies and where people prayed. But my brain, because of all the RPGs and horror movies and stuff, my brain went to like, oh, great, some sort of ghoul cult.
Yeah.
And, you know, that could, and actually I'm thinking about it, and it wasn't even a town of 800. It was a town of maybe 400. And it was in like the shadow, it was in an avalanche shadow, so it was like reducing like monthly. But anyway. But yeah,
Yes.
you can do cults all kinds of places, and you can base cults like I mean, it makes sense to have like a cult that worships I don't know, the Noki, or I'm trying to think of I don't know, Wendigos or frosty Cthulhu Mythos type entities, like you know, above the timberline in places like Alaska, Iceland, Greenland. But then again, it makes sense to worship things like Cthulhu if you're on an island, if you're here, if you're there. Maybe you're high status, high society. So, you know, and the people that you are going to meet are not going to be worshippers of Cthulhu. They're going to be worshippers of maybe Nyarlathotep or Hastur, or maybe some fancy clockwork version of Yog-Sothoth, or some sort of eyes wide shut Shub-Niggurath. I don't know. Any thoughts, Dave?
Well, and there's always the thought that, you know, that's how the rich and the royals stay. And, you know, and we even see some of that, you know, in the ideas of the French Merovingians, you know, that they are divine. You know, that in fact all royalty was, you know, started out as we have the divine right. Yeah. And so, you know, there could be, that's how the rich stay rich, is that they have this secret cult they meet in their mansions, and they sacrifice, you know, a virgin under the full moon so that the stocks will go up. Yeah, yeah. The other thought is, well, you know, we think cult's bad, but what if it's a good guy cult? What if it's a cult of monster killers, you know? Yeah. Monster hunters, you know, and it's your, you know, sort of Charlie's Angels, but Charlie's some sort of divine god that sends messages that says, go out and, you know, find these monsters. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. This kind of stuff I always like to... There's certain mythos entities I like to use more than others. I tend to use Clark Ashton Smith entities to be the good guys. If I'm gonna do that, if I'm gonna Lumley or if I'm gonna Lumley up my stuff, I'm gonna use Clark Ashton Smith characters to be good guys. But I haven't done that kind of thing since I was like 13. But yeah, you can always have. And it could be that the cult is evil. It's just that the monsters that you're fighting are more evil than the players. Sure. Or they're just neutral. It's, you know, Nodens. I think Nodens is a good one. Nodens is the hunter. I've generally used Nodens, Sathagwa, and Atlach-Nacha to be my like positive, like not straightforward. Like maybe they're like, hey, I have stuff here. Please don't destroy the Earth. Figure out a way to keep this stuff here. I don't want to have to go back to Saturn. Are you familiar with a comic book called Fall of Cthulhu? No, I am not. So the cult of Nodens in this, they have no problem killing bystanders. Sure, yeah. You get in the way, they'll kill you. Okay. But they're not. They don't kill. They're hunters. Yeah. They're hunters. They hunt the things of Cthulhu. But if a human gets in the way, well, that's So now that's your problem. So they're not good people, but so I think Nodens, and because Nodens or Orion, Orion the Hunter, you could make a cult of Nodens that doesn't have to be, the good guys' morals. Their alignment is kill the enemy.
Yeah.
They're true neutral. They're an assignment or neutral lawful, and that they follow the hunting guild rules. So they're not necessarily good people.
Yeah.
But what they're hunting kills more innocents.
Or something I just thought of is, what if you had like a Blackwater type group that worships Nodens that the United States government is getting a little bit nervous about? So your Delta Green team is like, I don't know. That's just like I think a smashed up summary right there. There'd be a lot more to it, but I don't know. Maybe in your modern Call of Cthulhu game, there is a cult of Nodens that everyone's like not sure if they're good or bad, but they have heavy artillery and they're willing, they helped you that one time. Maybe they'll help you again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the concept of like a group of academics that, I don't know, have like a chunk of Harley Warren's or of something that Harley Warren had written down, and are like, oh yeah, hey, this is how we're gonna fight stuff from here on. Or what if you have a group of mathematicians that have Wilmarth's books and are not Wilmarth. Gilman, thank you, Gilman. You have a group of people that have Gilman's old books and, have figured out how to use it and are, making deals with Nyarlathotep in that one chamber that they can look down and there's little ornaments of, elder things. And, what if you get a group that starts worshiping, Keziah Mason and Nyarlathotep and all that other fun stuff because they found Gilman's notes. And, you could have scientist collectives finding, Herbert West's stuff. You could get like gentlemen's groups. You could get Masonic orders. You could get just kind of like what seems like a after school kids club. There's like any kind of organization can hide itself as a cult. A cult could even hide itself as something that it's not, pretending to be a cult because what they're actually doing is far more terrible. I don't know. I don't even know what that would be.
Got like the esoteric order of the Dagon. Dagon. It's got a public-facing front, and then the secret stuff, the bottom of the iceberg.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, and if you've watched any HBO Showtime specials on cults that have come out in the last couple years, like whether it be Tiger King or Nixium, they show you how to do it.
Oh, yeah.
But you can watch those shows and go, oh, okay, you know what? I could probably base a swamp cult off of Joe Exotic. That would be easy.
Absolutely. Tiger King is absolutely an examination of cults in America.
And it's like everyone who owned tigers in that had a different way of doing it, but it seemed like a cult. And it seemed like cults aimed at different social classes too, and it all seemed very effective. Like Tiger King, you had like a cult that more or less a woman who got the public to come in and help, like all the time, like have to turn people away. And then you have someone who preys on people coming right out of prison, people dealing with social situations that are beyond their control, people who are in need, preying on people who are in need. And then you have, I can't even remember the guy who rides on the elephant. And
Doc Antler.
Yeah, and who preys on, like, women who...
He makes it a harem.
Yeah, he makes it a harem, and he preys on women. He has, like, this weird narcissism. They all have a weird narcissism. I think that has something to do with cult. Anyway, but if you haven't seen Tiger King, watch this stuff. But you definitely get the idea. It's like 3 different cults of... They're all very similar in certain ways, and they're all very different in very, very different ways. And then you get things like NXIVM, and if you watch that, it's like there's a public front, and then there's like all these splinters, and then like all these splinters kind of splinter down to another thing that's like even worse. It's just like there's a public face, and all that public face is like self-interest by all the people, and so many people turning their backs and their eyes onto whatever else is going on because they don't want to lose the money that they're making. They don't want to lose the social power that they get from this networking. And it's not until like things become public that people are like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have been a part of that. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting documentaries out there on cults, but yeah, it's you could just kind of like figure out what your campaign is based off of your cult, or base your campaign off of your campaign, and then try and like your campaign setting and go, I want to set something in this time period, this social economic group, and these things I want to happen, and then be like, oh well, who would prey on these people? How would they do it? And what's the big bad terrible thing overall? Those are 2 ways that I think about it. Do you have any input?
So maybe one more thing before we close.
Sure.
And that is, especially for modern campaigns,
yeah,
the corporation is a cult.
Oh yeah,
and we see that really well in Angel in Wolfram and Hart.
Yeah,
where it turns out it's really the Wolfram Hart cult. But that, and you see that thing, especially, maybe not as much now, but like when Roger and Me came out, where these people really believed that their company and their CEOs believed in them. Or believed in them and cared about them.
I will talk about another personal experience that I had where I worked at a company that there was a cult within, but it was like an open cult, and everyone who is a part of this company is aware of the fact that they are a part of this cult. It is a shoe-wear company in Oregon that I legally can't... I signed a lot of NDAs, so I can't say its name when I talk about it. But anyway, people will have like the logo of this company tattooed where the design would appear on a shoe, or the name of the company on their foot where the logo or the name of the company would appear on the shoe. Like a lot of branding, like not branding like rawhide, heated metal branding, but like a lot of like tattooed branding on like feet and ankles. But also it just kind of this cult of personality of like making this place your whole life and your whole lifestyle, and like only wearing products from this company, even though like when you're on the campus, which is a huge multi-million-dollar campus, state-of-the-art, you can't get into anywhere unless you have like a pass or anything. Oh shoot, I think I just broke part of my NDA. But everyone's just like insane about this place and celebrates it and gives all of their family members. I know there's like people like, well, if I worked for a company like that, I'd be super happy. And it's like, but I know people who work at another shoe company that's also in Oregon that is Adidas, and they're not lunatics. They are not lunatics like this other place in Beaverton. And it's like, while I worked there, it was kind of scary how fanatical people were about the founders of the company and also the products and what the company's doing, even though the company had a lot of history of child labor and pollution, and the pollution never gets talked about because generally they try and push out the child labor, so people talk about the child labor and not the pollution problems. Anyway.
And I was I was going to say too. Let's say commerce is not a modern thing, so
No.
yeah, that'd be great for Call of Cthulhu modern. Great Call of Cthulhu, 1920s, where the robber barons, they had private armies.
Oh yeah.
But you could go even farther. Maybe it turns out that the Merchants Guild is made up of cultists.
Yeah. Say you have what was it called? The what plot where a bunch of World War I Marines were supposed to help take over America I can't remember what this. It happened in 1919 or 1920, and a bunch of people the business plot. Or I'm trying to remember the name of this, but it was pretty much the richest tried to get a bunch of soldiers to do their bidding, and they're like, "No, we love our country. We're not going to give it to a bunch of businessmen." But you could do that with your merchants in Waterdeep. You could do that with, have a cult that say you have a major war that ended 2-3 years ago, and you have a city full of, war veterans. What if a cult tries to take advantage of that and tries to take over a kingdom or a city-state or a region with the remnants of a war that maybe they lost, maybe they just have maybe they won and they just don't have all the money that they needed to pay the veterans. So you have all these ex-soldiers that are building camps around Waterdeep or something like that because they're still waiting for the gold that they were promised. And then some merchants go, "Hey, we'll pay you gold, but you got to do this stuff." And how did the merchants get this money? From worshiping deep ones who gave them the gold. Anyway, I don't know. There's a ton of stuff you can do.
No, absolutely, and I think that you can move it from time zones. I mean, time periods that maybe you didn't expect, such as a love of money cult in your D&D game.
Yeah. A Ponzi scheme in your cyberpunk. But as soon as you start talking about corporations, I was like, oh man, this is how to bring Call of Cthulhu into cyberpunk. Is you have a megacorp that is, instead of ran by a dragon, is ran by someone who's actually an avatar of a great old one, or is like a great old one in disguise or something like that, or a cult within a megacorp, like say your research and development team that's supposed to be doing genetic manipulation so that you can produce soy that is able to grow in sub-Saharan Africa or Siberia or something like that. But what they're actually doing is trying to build a suit of armor made out of shoggoths. Stuff like that. You're like, what? That's not soy. That's some weird biomass. But anyway, I think this episode is going to be hard to edit, Dave.
I will leave that up to you.
Well, thank you so much.
And you can hire out cultists.
Yeah, that's the plan. I was going to go on Fiverr and search for cultists. Anyway, everyone, we wish you a happy new year, as it is December 30th. And Dave, any plans for the new year in Oleander?
I plan on making it through this year if it kills me.
Okay, yeah. That's a good plan. My plan was I don't know, build more guitars. I don't have any New Year's resolutions, but I do have a resolution to end this episode. Dave, thank you so much for being part of People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos yet again, and thank you everyone for listening to that awesome interview Dave did. And thank you for listening for us to talk about cults in the Cthulhu Mythos. Copper Cow Coffee, Vietnamese pour-over, is the sponsor of this episode. Check out our other sponsors. Go to pgttcm.com. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your ma, tell your pa, ship me down to Sathagwa. Shirt is available in the shop. Anything else before we trudge off into this snowy day, Dave?
Nope, just be careful if you're joining cults.
Yeah. And be well, everyone. Oh, Dave, before we shut off, I want to say hey to your goats. Or raisins to your goats.
Well, thank you. My goats take your hay and they will raisin it up to milk.
All right, cool. See you later, everyone.
Bye.